Hey everyone, welcome to another macrophotography video. So at this time of year, as autumn progresses and less of the usual macrophotography subjects like insects and spiders can be found, a lot of macrophotographers will kind of change focus to things like slime molds and fungi that can be found at this time of year, or even just slow down and take a bit of a break throughout the winter. But there's still a lot of subjects, small arthropods, small insects, that can still be found throughout the autumn and even through the entire winter. And you just have to look in the right places. So in this video, I'm going to take you along for a photo walk in my local forest and just show you some of the ways that I still like to find subjects at this time of year. And yeah, let's see what I can find. So any of you who have been following my channel for a little bit longer will be very familiar with my favorite technique for finding subjects in winter, which is looking underneath dead wood and underneath logs on the forest floor. So I found a log right here that looks like it could have some insects, some springtails and things underneath. And I'm going to carefully roll it over. Also, very important, always roll something like this back afterwards. And I'm basically just going to scan underneath to see what I can find. First of all, the first thing that pops, or that kind of jumps out at me, is this really cool looking fungus here, which has some interesting textures and could make an interesting photo in itself. But before I photograph that, I'm just going to kind of scan along to see if I can find anything like springtails or really small animals like that. And I would photograph those before any fungi, because the fungus is going to stay put and springtails might not. So if I find an interesting composition that includes an animal, that will always be the first thing I photograph. And sometimes you might not see anything right away, and you just need to keep looking, because there's really almost always going to be something underneath the log. Maybe it won't make the most interesting composition, I won't always get a focus stack of something interesting, but at the very least there's almost always something here, and you just need to kind of focus on one spot, focus on one area for a while, and you're sure to spot something. So after scanning along the fungus, I haven't really found what I was really hoping for, which is some kind of springtail or mite or other small animal walking along the fungus. But the fungus textures themselves are quite cool as well. So I'm just going to go for a few texture stacks of that, of the textures. Even without an animal, I know that was kind of the point of the video, was finding the animals, but this is just a really cool opportunity and just a very cool fungus species that I always like photographing. So I'm going to go for a quick stack in this case, and then continue looking for some springtails. So I didn't end up seeing too much more under the other log, but I've moved over to the next spot, rolled over another log, and this is actually just about 2 meters over from the spot I was at just now. And right away I've spotted something really cool, which is a globular springtail, Disiotoma fusca, on the textures of a really interesting looking fungus. This is one of the most common globular springtail species, but if it's in a cool scene like this, definitely worth photographing, and I think that this could be a nice shot. I've switched to the Laowa 25mm, which is my high magnification lens, and I think I'm just going to go for a portrait first of all, if I can find a nice angle, and yeah, I think that looks pretty good. This springtail has actually turned into a more interesting find than I thought it would be, because while it is Disiotoma fusca, quite a common species at this location, it's actually a different color morph of this species than I usually see. You can see that the eye patch, the dark spots are still there, like with the normal color morph of the species, but the actual surrounding eye patch is this bright orangey red color, whereas if I compare it with the eye of a normal individual of this species, the usual form that I see at this location anyway, the eye patch is entirely black. And this is a different color form. This is what I believe is called Disiotoma fusca variation rufa, and I've only seen this once before. And finds like these just go to show that even if you're at a location where you've been lots before, I've probably been here looking for springtails and soil animals 100 times easily, maybe even more. And even then, I still find something new, something interesting almost every time I come here. So that's one of the things that I love most about macrophotography. There's always something cool to find, even at a location you've been all the time. While a lot of the subjects at this time of year might be concealed under leaf litter, under logs, or under bark, it's still worth keeping your eyes peeled above ground and out in the open, because occasionally a subject still will be out in the open. In this case, little ways up this young tree, I spotted what looks like some kind of darkling beetle, Tenebrionidae, and it seems to be infected maybe with some kind of fungus. It's in a very unnatural position, and I'm just going to go. You can see it's a bit of an awkward angle. I could go vertical, but I don't think the lighting would look very good, so I'm gonna go like this, and my diffuser bumps into the tree, which means I can't go super close, but I think this still looks okay. And then I'm just gonna go for a quick stack. So a lot of the springtails I've found so far have been underneath logs and on logs and things like that, but it's just as possible to find them literally just in the leaf litter. If it's been rainy recently, if it's quite wet, then they're just completely out in the open. But if it's a little bit drier like it is like now, you might have to just look underneath, maybe dig around a bit, but I've already found a springtail, globular springtail, on this leaf right here. In this case, I'm using the Laowa 65mm, my lower magnification lens, because I want to use the veins of the leaf as a compositional element and get a slightly wider shots. And I think I've already found quite a nice framing right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and get a stack. I know kind of the whole point of this video was not to photograph fungi and things like that, but I found a super cute mushroom growing out of the side of this log, and I can't resist getting a quick stack. So I'm going to go for a low angle in this case to get some nice sky colors in the background, get my exposure right, and I think, yeah, this is just too cute not to get a shot. So the actual reason I've come to this fallen tree is to show you another method of finding subjects that I really like in the winter. Again, people who have been watching my videos for longer will be familiar with this, but basically just to peel back the bark of fallen trees like this. And I'm realizing now this was a terrible example because the bark of this tree is super firmly still attached, even though it's been lying here for quite a while, clearly. But you get the idea. Just carefully, if you're able to, peel back a small section of the bark of a tree, and there's often insects that will overwinter there or live in dead trees. And, of course, like with logs, place the bark back exactly how it was before. So underneath this log, I've spotted a few woodlice here, which are a very, very common species here. I photograph woodlice all the time, and I've gotten a few. The heads of these aren't in a great spot, so I don't think I can get any portraits. And I've already gotten quite a few top-down textural images of woodlice, but they can be quite nice for these shots. I'll show you a few of my favorites I've gotten recently, and I thought I would try something a little bit different in this case, and go to a higher magnification and zoom in on just a portion of the woodlouse. In this case, just the back end with the, I'm not actually sure what the correct term for them is, but the tips at the rear end of the woodlouse, which also look kind of interesting. And especially with this very simple wood texture, I think that could be an interesting shot, something a little bit different than I usually take. So I'm gonna find a nice framing. I think that looks decent, and then just go for a quick stack. Nope, not quite. Try again. So while I think that is kind of an interesting shot, I think something that would add a bit more of an interesting compositional element to it is if the rear end of the woodlouse were actually close to the edge of the bark or something, or if you had at least one more line going along. And to do this, I found a woodlouse that's right on the edge of this piece of thin bark here, and I'm just going to lift it up so that the background is further away, and because it's not a very bright day, this gives me a black background. So if I can rest my hand here to stay a bit more stable, and then I'm going to place the edge of the bark around the upper third of the frame and the tip of the woodlouse around the lower third, and then get my lighting right, and then I think that's quite a nice framing. So underneath this small log here, I've found a flat-backed millipede in the genus Polydesmus, and it's curled up in quite a nice position here. So I'm just going to go for a quick stack before it starts to move. If I can find a nice angle. Right, so while I didn't find too many really exciting things for me today, did find a few interesting subjects, and also really had fun experimenting with some of my more common subjects like the woodlice and springtails to get some shots that are a bit different than I normally would. And I hope you were able to pick up some tips from this video for how to find macro subjects at this time of year, and it really just is about getting outside and seeing what is there, because there's always something active. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.